How does a man paint the sound of a funeral drum beating in the chest of a dying civilization without painting a single drum, a single soldier, or a single corpse? That is the haunting question that hangs in the air like heavy smoke when one confronts the monumental silence of Robert Motherwell. To stand before his work is not merely to look at an arrangement of shapes, it is to be pulled into a gravitational field of profound, crushing, and undeniably elegant melancholy. We are not dealing here with the frantic, nervous energy of a Pollock, nor the jagged industrial violence of a Klein. We are dealing with something far more ancient and far more terrifyingly civilized. We are dealing with the sensation of loss that has been processed by a brilliant mind until it becomes a heavy black shadow that refuses to leave the room. Robert Motherwell was the youngest of the great American Abstract Expressionists, but in his work he often feels like the oldest, the one who arrived after the battle was over to count the bodies and erect the tombstones. To truly understand Motherwell, you must first discard the stereotype of the starving, wild-eyed bohemian artist. Motherwell was not a brawler from the coal mines or a mystic from the plains. He was a banker's son, a Stanford graduate, a student of philosophy at Harvard, a man who translated French poetry and studied psychoanalysis. This is crucial because his art is the collision of a massive intellect with a massive emotion. It is what happens when a man who knows everything about the history of human thought realizes that thought alone cannot save us from the tragedy of existence. His painting is not a scream, it is a statement. It is a statement made in a language of heavy ovals and thick vertical bars, a language of warm black and dusty white that speaks of the inevitability of death and the persistence of the human sex drive in the face of that death. There is a profound misunderstanding among casual observers that abstract art is about nothing. In Motherwell's case, the abstraction is about everything that cannot be said with words. He acted as the bridge between the European surrealists, who arrived in New York fleeing the Nazis in the 1940s, and the rough-and-tumble American painters. From the surrealists, he learned the technique of psychic automatism. This is a technical term that you must understand. It does not mean drawing like a robot, it means drawing without a plan. It means allowing the hand to move across the paper or canvas faster than the conscious mind can censor it, allowing the doodle to reveal the hidden architecture of the unconscious. But where the surrealists used this to draw dream monsters and melting clocks, Motherwell used it to find abstract forms that felt right in a primal ethical sense. He would let the brush wander, but then his critical mind would step in to edit, to solidify, to freeze the gesture into a monument. The visual dominance of black in his work is the first thing that strikes the viewer, and it requires a deep sensory adjustment to appreciate. In the hands of a lesser artist, black is simply the absence of light, a hole in the canvas. In Motherwell's hands, black is a color. It is a presence. He famously spoke of warm black. This is not the cold, dead black of outer space. It is the black of Spanish velvet, the black of a Goya painting, the black of deep shadows in a sun-drenched Californian courtyard. It is a black that feels like it has blood running through it. When you look at those massive, sprawling black shapes that dominate his most famous series, you are looking at a substance that feels heavy, like wet earth or thick wool. It presses against the white of the canvas. It is not a void. It is a wall of feeling. It is the color of mourning, yes, but it is also the color of the night, of intimacy and of sleep. Structurally, his work is often defined by a very specific recurring tension, the tension between the vertical and the oval. This is the architecture of his Elegies. You see upright, rigid bars, architectural, phallic, unyielding, and squeezed between them are these hanging organic ovals. They are suspended like fruit, or like testicles, or like heavy sacks of fluid. There is an undeniable sexual undertone to this geometry, but it is a tragic sexuality. It is the cycle of life and death locked in a static embrace. The verticals hold the structure up, the ovals weigh it down. It creates a visual rhythm that mimics the beat of a slow march, 1-2, 1-2. It is the visual equivalent of a dirge. This repetition is not due to a lack of ideas. It is a ritual. Motherwell painted this configuration over 100 times, not because he wanted to get it right, but because the feeling it expressed, the lament for the death of liberty, symbolized by the Spanish Civil War, was a feeling that never went away. We must speak of the Spanish Civil War, not as a history lesson, but as the emotional engine of his art. Motherwell was a young man when the Spanish Republic fell to fascism in the late 1930s. He was not Spanish, he did not fight there, but the event scarred his generation. It represented the death of idealism. It was the moment when the good guys lost. He used this historical tragedy as a metaphor for all human loss. When you look at his work, you are not supposed to see specific battles or generals. You are supposed to feel the universal weight of a lost cause. You are supposed to feel the dignity of resistance in the face of overwhelming darkness. The Elegies are tombstones for anyone who has ever fought for something beautiful and seen it crushed by brute force. However, it would be a mistake to view Motherwell only as a painter of doom. He was also a master of the collage, and in his collages we see the other side of his temperament, the civilized, sensual lover of life. Motherwell took the technique of collage, pasting paper onto a surface, which had been invented by Picasso and Braque, and he Americanized it. He blew it up. He made collages that were 6 feet tall, but look closely at the materials. He did not paste pictures of tanks or explosions. He pasted the wrappers of Gauloise's cigarettes, labels from expensive wine bottles, sheet music, torn edges of high-quality art paper. These are the detritus of a refined life. They speak of sitting in cafes, of reading poetry, of the tactile pleasure of tearing paper. The tear is significant. In a Motherwell collage, you rarely see a cut edge made with scissors. You see a torn edge. The tear is a record of violence, however small. It is a jagged, fibrous line that separates one reality from another. It brings a sense of fragility to the work. By incorporating these bits of trash, the literal garbage of his daily existence, into the high art of the canvas, Motherwell was grounding his abstraction in the real world. He was saying that even in the midst of mourning, we still smoke, we still drink, we still receive mail. Life continues in its mundane details. The contrast between the epic black paint and the fragile, torn paper label creates a poignant tension between the eternal and the ephemeral. The black paint lasts forever. The paper label is meant to be thrown away. By saving it, he makes the momentary permanent. Let us discuss the concept of awkwardness in his work, because this is where many people get tripped up. We are conditioned to think that great art must be graceful, polished, and skillful in a traditional sense. Motherwell deliberately courted a certain clumsiness. His shapes often bump into each other in uncomfortable ways. The edges are not taped off, they are brushed by hand, often wavering or bleeding. Splatters of paint are left where they fell. This is not incompetence, it is a philosophical choice. He believed that if a painting was too polished, it became decoration. It became wallpaper. To be art, it had to have the mark of the human struggle. It had to look a little bit difficult. He wanted the viewer to feel the hesitation of the hand, the weight of the decision to stop the brush here and not there. The awkwardness is the proof of humanity. It is the visual evidence that a man, not a machine, made this object. There is also the matter of scale. Motherwell, like his contemporaries Rothko and Newman, painted huge. But his largeness feels different. Rothko's largeness is atmospheric. It surrounds you like a fog. Motherwell's largeness is architectural. It confronts you like a building. When you stand in front of a 20-foot-long canvas, the black shapes loom over you. They have a physical presence that can be intimidating. This intimidation is intentional. He wanted to surround the viewer with the sentiment of the work. He wanted to physically engulf you in the tragedy. You cannot ignore a painting that is larger than your peripheral vision. It forces a confrontation. It demands that you stop talking and start feeling. The white in Motherwell's paintings is just as important as the black, and it is equally misunderstood. It is not blank space, it is not emptiness. It is a distinct color, usually a creamy off-white or a stark, dusty white. It acts as the silence between the notes. In the visual syntax of his work, if black is death or heavy matter, white is life or light. But it is a light that is being encroached upon. The black forms seem to be moving across the white field, threatening to swallow it up. Or conversely, the white seems to be holding the black at bay, acting as the structural support for the heavy, dark masses. The drama of the painting lies in this interaction. It is a figure-ground relationship, where the figure and the ground are fighting for dominance. Neither wins. They are locked in a stalemate, and that stalemate is the painting. One cannot ignore the literary quality of his mind. Motherwell loved poetry, particularly the French symbolists and the Spanish poets like Federico Garcia Lorca. He often titled his paintings after poems or literary concepts. This was rare for an abstract expressionist. Most of them preferred numbers or dates. Motherwell gave us titles like Elegy to the Spanish Republic, Je t'aime, Open. He understood the power of the word to direct the eye. He used titles to give the viewer a key, a way to unlock the emotional tone of the abstract forms. He was telling us that painting is not a separate activity from thinking or reading. It is part of the same continuum of human expression. He painted with the soul of a poet, treating the brushstroke as a stanza, a rhythm, a sudden break in the line. Consider the Open series, a later body of work that baffled many critics. After years of heavy, black, tragic forms, Motherwell shifted to painting large fields of color, often blue or ochre, broken only by a few charcoal lines forming a partial rectangle, like a window or a door. These works are radically simple, they are almost Zen-like. But do not mistake them for minimalism. They are not about geometry, they are about the window. The concept of the window has haunted art since the Renaissance, the painting as a window onto the world. Motherwell paints the window, but the window looks out onto nothing but color. It is a window onto the void, or perhaps a window onto the inner self. These works are contemplative, quieter, less violent than the Elegies, but they possess a similar philosophical weight. They ask, what are we looking at? What is inside and what is outside? They are meditations on the act of seeing itself. The psychology of the brushstroke in Motherwell's art is distinctively ethical. He believed that every mark on the canvas was a moral decision. To paint a line this way and not that way was an expression of character. This sounds intense, perhaps overly serious to the modern ear, but it was the ethos of his time. They believed that painting could reveal the truth of the artist's soul. In Motherwell's brushwork, you see a man who is careful but bold. You see a lack of frivolity. There are no decorative flourishes. Every mark is structural. It is there because it needs to be there to hold the composition together. This gives the work a sense of integrity. It feels honest. It feels like the work of a man who would not lie to you, even if the truth is depressing. Let us address the criticism often leveled at him, that he was too repetitive, that he painted the same elegy over and over again for 40 years. This criticism misses the point of seriality in modern art. Motherwell was not repeating himself because he ran out of ideas. He was repeating himself because the problem he was trying to solve, how to express the tragic sense of life through abstract form, was unsolvable. Each painting was a new attempt, a new variation on the theme. It is like a monk chanting a mantra. The repetition is the point. It deepens the meaning. It turns the image into an archetype. By the 100th time you see that oval and bar configuration, it has ceased to be a painting and has become a universal symbol, burned into the retina of art history. Furthermore, the influence of the American sublime is filtered through a European sensibility in his work. Artists like Clifford Still or Barnett Newman sought a raw, wild, untouched sublime, the sublime of the canyon or the tundra. Motherwell's sublime is the sublime of the cathedral or the ruin. It feels inhabited. It feels like it has a history. Even in his most abstract moments, there is a sense of civilization, of culture, of a human hand having touched the world. He does not reject the past, he carries it with him. His abstraction is not a denial of history, but a distillation of it. He compresses centuries of human struggle into a few heavy shapes. The sensuality of his work is often overlooked because of its intellectual reputation. But look at the surface. Look at the way the paint is applied. It is lush. It is juicy. He enjoyed the physical sensation of the medium. The edges of the forms often have a halo where the oil from the paint has bled into the raw canvas, creating a soft, golden aura around the black shapes. He allowed this to happen. He welcomed it. It adds a biological, organic quality to the hard geometry. It makes the paintings feel alive, as if they are sweating or breathing. It reminds us that these are objects made of fluid and cloth, subject to the laws of physics and chemistry. Why does Motherwell matter today? In a world that has moved so far beyond the existential anxieties of the Cold War, he matters because he teaches us how to mourn. We live in a culture that tries to hide death, to sanitize loss, to scroll past the tragedy, to get to the funny cat video. Motherwell forces us to stop and look at the darkness. He gives dignity to the feeling of sadness. He shows us that grief can be beautiful, that it can be monumental, that it can be constructed into something enduring. He validates the melancholic temperament. He tells us that it is okay to feel the weight of the world, and that in fact, feeling that weight is what makes us human. Moreover, his work stands as a bulwark against the trivialization of art. In an era of non-fungible tokens and instant visual gratification, Motherwell's paintings are slow. They are difficult, they are stubborn, they refuse to entertain you. They require you to bring your own history and your own emotions to the table. They function as mirrors for the viewer's own depth. If you are empty, the painting will look like empty shapes. If you carry your own elegies inside you, the painting will resonate like a bell. The New York School, of which he was the unofficial spokesman, was a group of disparate individuals, but Motherwell was the glue. He was the one who could explain what they were doing to the outside world. But in doing so, he often isolated himself. He was the rich kid, the intellectual, and sometimes his peers resented him for it. Yet, his art is just as raw as theirs. It just wears a suit. It is the rawness of the boardroom and the library, the quiet desperation of the educated mind realizing that all the books in the world cannot stop a bullet. When you look at the wandering lines in his drawings and smaller works, notice how they differ from the confident slashes of the large paintings. They are tentative, searching lines. They look like a seismograph of a beating heart. They explore the white space with a sense of curiosity and trepidation. This vulnerability is the flip side of the monumental strength. It shows us the man behind the monument. It shows us the doubt. And for Motherwell, doubt was a creative force. The willingness to live in uncertainty, to make a mark without knowing where it would lead, was the essence of the creative act. One must also consider the element of rhythm in his composition. He was deeply influenced by music, and his paintings often have a staccato quality. The black bars act like beats in a measure of music, and the ovals act like sustained notes. There is a sense of time passing as your eye moves across the canvas from left to right. It is a linear progression, much like reading a sentence or listening to a melody. This connects his visual art back to his love for literature and poetry. He is writing on the wall with shapes instead of letters. The physical exhaustion of creating these works should not be underestimated. Moving huge brushes loaded with pounds of heavy oil paint across a canvas that is larger than a human body requires immense physical strength. Yet, Motherwell maintained a sense of elegance in the exertion. He did not attack the canvas like Pollock. He engaged with it. It was a dance, not a wrestling match. This elegance is visible in the final product. Even the most violent splashes have a sense of placement, a sense of having arrived there by destiny rather than by accident. In the final analysis, the art of Robert Motherwell is an invitation to be serious. It is an invitation to turn off the noise of the modern world and enter a space of contemplation. It asks us to confront the big questions, life, death, sex, freedom, without the crutch of religion or ideology. It offers us the solace of form. It says that yes, the world is tragic, and yes, we will all die, but look at how strong this black shape is. Look at how it holds its ground against the white. Look at how beautiful the struggle is. So, do not walk past a Motherwell thinking it is just wallpaper for a corporate lobby. Stop. Let the blackness fill your vision. Let the rhythm of the verticals and ovals sync with your pulse. Feel the weight of it. It is a heavy art for heavy times, but within that heaviness, there is a profound release. It is the release of finally acknowledging the shadows that we all carry. Robert Motherwell painted the shadows so that we wouldn't have to carry them alone. He built a cathedral out of shadows and invited us all to stand inside it, silent, dignified, and undeniably alive. It is a visual legacy that does not shout but echoes, a deep resonant thud that sounds like the closing of a heavy door, or perhaps the opening of a new one.